Let the title race conversations commence. Welcome back to another Chelsea match reaction. Back in Premier League action. Back to winning ways. 2-0 away from home at Burnley today. A huge 3 points on the road, which puts us in a fantastic position. Second in the Premier League as it stands. Looking ahead of that Arsenal game next weekend. Can Chelsea do the unthinkable and usurp them at the top of the table? There's a couple of games to be played between now and then. So before we get carried away, make sure to drop us a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for all the latest and greatest Chelsea content. The Blueprint new series dropping this week, but we will get straight into it as there are a lot of positives to take from today. Far from a vintage Chelsea performance, but I'm going to get ahead of it. I'm going to jump in straight away with my man of the match, Andrey Santos. I think I speak for all Chelsea fans when we saw that team sheet today and we saw Moises Caicedo on the bench. Heart dropped a little bit. Bum cheeks clenched a little bit. We're thinking with Caicedo not in that first 11, this could be tougher than it should be against the team that we knew were going to cause us problems. Burnley, with all due respect, one of the lower opposition in the Premier League, should be on paper one of the easier games we will play this season. But Chelsea fans, we know more than anybody, better than anybody, these are the games that we struggle in most. I think I saw a clip from Sky Sports from a Chelsea fan saying he was more worried about the Burnley game than those against Barcelona and Arsenal. And you know what? I kind of feel it. I kind of get it. And for 45 minutes, or for the best part of 45 minutes, it felt like it was going to be one of those days. Even, I think, 70, 75 minutes, I didn't feel comfortable. I felt this is very much a game that Burnley can claw their way back in, a game that we hadn't killed it off, a game that we hadn't gone out and been ruthless in front of goal. Obviously, players like Liam Delap, just coming back into the fold from injury, I thought did okay today. I thought his hold-up play improved as the game went on. He clearly wants his first Premier League goal. He clearly wants to get on the score sheet. Maybe did take a couple of shots where the better option was to pass, but I thought he, on the whole, was fairly solid today. And I think across that front line, the wingers as well, I thought Pedro Neto, Jamie Gittins both put in excellent accounts of themselves, particularly that first Gittins cross for the Pedro goal I thought was absolutely sublime. Brilliant ball in and a great diving header from Pedro Neto, but an absolutely sublime little cross in from Jamie Gittins. I don't think we can give him enough credit for just how good that assist was. But Andrey Santos today, for me, far and away the best player on the pitch. I think going back to that Caicedo point, we were all a little bit worried not having our enforcer on the pitch. I think he does, the work of 2-3 players in that central midfield. And it did feel a lot, during that first half, it did feel like a game where we needed that stability. We needed someone to just come in, be that metronome, be that focal point, to slow the game down when we needed it, to control that possession in midfield. And I think Andrey Santos in the first half was being pulled about all over the shop, which is why Chelsea didn't kind of dominate the ball as we do when Caicedo's on the pitch. But Andrey Santos today, not just on the ball, I think off the ball, particularly in the first half, there were 3 big blocks in the first 15 minutes, one from Chalobah, one from Tosin, one from Andrey Santos. And I think he carried that on throughout the entirety of the game. Hands down man of the match for me today. I think it was only his 3rd Premier League start, and yet he is such a well-rounded central midfielder, such a well-rounded footballer. I remember there was a thread last year on Twitter, someone was asking about a hybrid midfielder. They said Chelsea have 2 great midfielders in Caicedo and Enzo, but you still feel like they're lacking that hybrid, that box-to-box, the guy that can do the defensive work and the attacking work. And Andrey Santos is that. Sublime performance from him today. I've got nothing but high hopes, nothing but high expectations for where Andrey Santos can go. I've seen a quote today from Brazil legend Juninho, big Juninho, saying that Andrey Santos is far better than him, will have a far better career than him. And that is praise coming from the Most High. Anybody that grew up in the noughties, the 90s will remember Juninho, Leon Juninho, free kick masterclass Juninho. This guy has technical ability, up there in certain elements of his game with the likes of Kaká. And this is a player who has left a legacy, not just for his club, but for his country. And we got players of this pedigree coming out and saying that Andrey Santos is going to be better than me. Yeah, if you're not listening, if your ears aren't already pricked up, they should be now. Take notice. This guy is a gem, a real gem. I followed him incredibly closely at Strasbourg last year. Quick plug to the Loan Watch series. We do a monthly Loan Watch series where we take a close look at the players on loan across the globe. Last season, Andrey Santos, week in, week out, was the standout. I was struggling to think of YouTube thumbnails, descriptions that didn't involve Andrey Santos. He was that prominent last season, and he just continues to make headlines quietly. I think he is an incredible, what that season last year on loan at Strasbourg did for him, I think unprecedented. And the fact that we can look at that as a pathway now and say that we are sending players like Mamadou Sarr, Kendry Paez, Mike Penders to do exactly the same thing, develop as individuals over in Strasbourg, and then can come back to Chelsea as far more polished players than we were when we sent them over there. Yeah, I've got nothing but praise for Andrey Santos, the journey that he's taken, the way in which he's applied himself, and the way in which he's playing himself into this Chelsea team. How many times have we seen Chelsea sign a prospect, a future potential wonder kid in the last 3-4 years, and they haven't lived up to the hype, they haven't lived up to the expectation, and within 2 seasons they're being moved on. There were rumours in the summer that Andrey Santos was subject to bids of up to 60, 70 million from Saudi, from other teams as well. But he didn't want to he didn't want to accept it. He wanted to keep playing in the Premier League because he recognises this is the best league in the world, and this is where a player of his calibre should be proving his mettle. And you know what? Sublime. 10 out of 10 performance today from Andrey Santos. I hardly noticed at points that Moises Caicedo wasn't on the pitch. And the fact that that's allowed Moises Caicedo a rest to be able to play those 2 games against Barcelona and Arsenal and not worry about, giving him a bit of, not worrying about him blowing after the 70th, giving him a little bit of time off. I think the weight lifted off the team's shoulders from Andrey Santos there. He's doing what I think we expected Esugo to do. When we heard that Esugo was staying this summer, I think we expected him to deputise for Moises Caicedo. Andrey Santos can very much do that role and also play higher up the pitch. I have nothing but good things to say about Andrey Santos. Fantastic performance from him today. And moving back, well, actually, you know what? We move backwards before we move forward and finish on the front line. I think Marc Cucurella was solid today. Reece James in the first half. I think you see, obviously, Reece James coming off at half-time. Benoit Badiashile coming on and moving over to the left side of centre-back. Chalobah moving out to the right-back. I think even though Reece James doesn't get up and down like he did, like he used to, like we're so familiar to seeing him do, I think he still adds such a different dynamic on that right side. He is still such an asset, such a threat with his deliveries into the box that even when he's not bombarding, even when he's not doing those overlapping runs, I think he still does. He provides a different dimension, a different method of attack, a different route through to goal. And Chalobah just doesn't really have that same. He doesn't have the same delivery, not in terms of the quality. He's just not got the same awareness. I don't think he is as much of a threat out wide. So I think when we're looking at replacing fullbacks, I think this whole centre-back overload for me and having players that can play at centre-back but also on, in wide areas like Chalobah, like Jarell Hato on the left side, I think while I understand it, and while, in a game like today, you want to make sure that the back four is tight and that we don't concede. And, in the end, hindsight, it worked. But I think you could look at that substitution if Burnley had gone and scored, particularly the one where we took the lap off and put Malo Gusto on. And then we've got 4 at the back with 2 defenders in centre mid in Cucurella and Malo Gusto. I just think there's a little bit of imbalance. Whereas Chelsea have had... and this kind of goes through years and years. How many times have Chelsea produced top quality fullbacks, both on the left and the right side? We've always had, when we've been at the top of our game, we've always had fullbacks doing a lot of the damage. And in Cucurella and Reece James, big fan of that. I think they were both very, very solid today. And, ultimately, I think that's the best fullback pairing and, arguably one of the best fullback pairings, if not the best, in the league when they're playing, to the best of their ability. But I think the sooner that we nail this back 4 down, the better. I think it was a better defensive performance today, particularly, the centre-backs. They've come under a lot of scrutiny recently. Tosin, Chalobah in recent months have received a lot of criticism, not just from the Chelsea fan base, from Enzo Maresca, from a lot of pundits, from a lot of analytical perspectives. But I think they did a good job today. The thing that I want to see is just consistency in that back line. And who knows if it's going to be a completely different centre-back pairing for Barcelona. Probably will be. And then will probably be slightly different for Arsenal at the weekend again. So the sooner that we figure out who our best centre-back pairing is and what our best back four is, and that we can keep just laying that back four down, the better. But I don't really have too many complaints from that back line today. I think on the whole, there were a couple of miscommunication errors, but on the whole, I think they were fairly solid. And then moving forward into the front line, I think Enzo Fernandez, just a quick moment on him. Again, another player that's received a lot of criticism this season, but I think his performances, he plays when it matters. He puts performances in when it matters. I think 2 seasons ago, Chelsea fans loved his distribution, loved what he was doing for the team in terms of the passing, how he got us ticking, but people wanted to see more goals, more assists. He has now added that to it, last season, added that to his game. Now people are complaining that he's not controlling the game so much. I think he is still kind of finding that balance between being that deep-lying distributor, that deep-lying playmaker who can hold things together and keep things ticking over for Chelsea in the midfield, but also can get forward, very Lampard-esque, arrive late on the box, be in the right place at the right time, as he was today for that second goal. And I think that aspect of his game, that side of his game, has improved tenfold. And I think what he's gained in terms of the scoring and the goal contributions, I think he hasn't lost more of his distribution. If you get, I think it's still a fine balance, and he needs to find that. But I'm fairly happy with how he's playing at the moment. I think, he turned up the other week against Tottenham, as he always does. I think in the big games he turns up. While he's, very red-blooded South American, very passionate, I think he is definitely a leader in this squad. You've got to remember that this is a player that won the World Cup at 21 and was the best young player at a tournament, one of the standout players in that Argentina team in that 2022 World Cup. So I think this is still a player that will continue to grow and will continue to improve. But I think he's really, like I said earlier, we should have deaded this game. We should have gone out and been ruthless and killed it. And Enzo Fernandez helping us get over the line, providing that leadership, still crashing that box at 85 plus minutes, I think is it shouldn't go unmentioned, and it shouldn't go under the radar. But that front three, like I said, or front four, including João Pedro, I think, as I said, Delap, I think his game's, his hold-up play improved as it went on, and I think he didn't do too much or didn't have too much to do in the first half, but I think second half, there was a couple of periods of play, a couple of little interchanges as well in the first half with João Pedro, Gittins. I think having João Pedro in that 10, knowing what it's like to be a 9, he can telegraph the kind of balls and the runs that he would make to Liam Delap. So I think having those two build a relationship, I think that will develop, that will continue to thrive. I just think Delap offers a real different dynamic. And I know that Mark Yu came on, had an instant impact. Really, really pleased with him. I think that the best period of play, or the best move of the game, was his centre-forward play for that second goal. I think the way in which he held off the defender, got in front of his man, brought the keeper out, and then put it on a plate for Enzo Fernandez was absolutely sublime. So while Andrey Santos is runaway winner of man of the match, I want to give an honourable mention, an honourable shout out to Mark Yu for his work in that second goal, which was absolutely fantastic. And also just reiterate the assist for the first goal. Jamie Gittins, I thought he was great. First couple of opportunities, had a couple of chances to shoot, didn't look too confident, looked a little bit tentative. I was thinking, is this going to be another one where Gittins just kind of fails to produce, fails to kind of give us an end product? But that definitely wasn't the case. And even if it was just kind of that one assist, I mean, there were a couple of other good balls in there, but that assist alone, that ball over for Pedro Neto alone, sumptuous, 10 out of 10. Put it on a sixpence, could not ask for anything more than from a winger. And then obviously Pedro Neto on the other side, helped create the goal for Enzo Fernandez. Did well to beat his man and feed it into Mark Yu. I think his deliveries were fairly solid. And again, his defensive work, I know this is something that gets overlooked because he's an attacking player, and at the end of the day, people only really look at goals and assists and output and what you've done for the team. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Pedro Neto is now our top scorer this season. Maybe equal with Esteval, but I think in the league he's our top scorer. But I think the work he does off the ball is unbelievable. I think the way in which he lessens the defensive load on his right back, he is a right back's dream to play with. Number one, you put a ball up that side, he is always going to chase it, and 9 times out of 10, he's probably going to reach it and put something into the box. But the way in which, if you're a defender and you've got two players coming at you, Pedro Neto, if he's not already there, he's going to be thundering back to double up on the week. He's going to be there to back you up every single day of the week and twice on a Sunday. And that's a big reason why I think Pedro Neto is still, for me, in terms of pecking order of wingers, he's top. I think, obviously Esteval is just in his own category before anybody gets onto me for that, but Pedro Neto is so far ahead of Gittins and Garnacho and the other wingers that we have on the books because of the work that he does, not just his output and his, his delivery in the final third, but what he does off the ball, I think is sublime. And I think that was the big takeaway from today is while Chelsea weren't, like I said earlier, it wasn't a vintage Chelsea performance. We weren't particularly devastating, weren't very ruthless. We didn't create that many chances today. And it was a game, like I said earlier, on paper, you're expecting Chelsea to theoretically blow the opposition out of the water. But I think the work that players like Pedro Neto, Andrey Santos did today off the ball, sublime. Fantastic performances from a few individuals. I mean, Marc Cucurella put in a really good shift as well. I think he is pivotal to the switch between attack and defence when he moves into midfield. The runs that he makes, the chaos that he causes with his movement in the centre of the pitch, it is paramount to the way that Chelsea play under Enzo Maresca. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you would pick as your man of the match. Who did you think had a standout performance today? And would you play that wing pairing against Barcelona? It's looking like Pedro Neto and Jamie Gittins, I believe, both finished the game today. So will Garnacho and Esteval start against Barcelona? Is that the right option? Or should Pedro Neto get the nod again? Let me know in the comments. As always, make sure to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We got an Academy match report following very shortly after this, as well as the Blueprint new series dropping this week. Stay tuned. Make sure to follow at twobluespodcast on the Instagram and the TikTok to stay up to date with all of the latest news as well. Until then, up the Chelsea.